on the repeal of the Town Council's resolution of August 9th, 2011, approving lease agreements of the parking lots at 2-26 North Main Street, 36-40 North Main Street, 60 North Main Street, and 48-50 North Main Street, as requested by Councilor Economopoulos.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Okay, thank you. I had an opportunity to stand many hours to get signatures for the referendum, and I had an opportunity to talk to many people in our community. And I even had nice conversations with two of the owners, one on telephone and one in person. And they do make some very good points. However, the bottom line, and I don't wish to cloud the issue again with how the permit's going to be issued, and if Holy Trinity School is going to be giving permits of the 90, are we going to still have only 40 spaces? And I mean, there's just so many different things that it's a can of worms, to be honest with you. But the only reason that we are obligated, I feel, as a council and as a community to repeal this is because the people, and they will show that if the referendum gives them an opportunity to, are against using town funds for private property, for the improvement of private property owners. And I know you just handed me a letter that said that the Economic Development Commission unanimously approved a motion to support the lease, but why wouldn't they? It's going to help that section of town, and it's going to help people with parking. But the bottom line is, if we had, I asked Mr. McCulley, the mayor's office, and the legal office if we've had any letters of complaint, and I have received, there's basically nothing here. There's 4 letters from 1975 and 8, and then that's it. There's one letter talking about a fence that was in 1980 something. So I mean, we're not even talking about any complaints of that parking lot. I think if the town had upheld their end of the bargain and had done patchwork like they were supposed to and kept the lines painted where they were supposed to, and cut off the scruffy trees and bushes like they should have, I don't think we would have to invest $500,000 in this property. And this is purely a precedent-setting resolution of using town funds. I'm not saying the word taxes, because I know this is electric division money, but that's money that can be used in other capital projects. That's money that could be used in other places that would better serve the entire community and not basically just private business owners. Some of the properties are for sale. Again, it's a can of worms. You're helping a person sell their property by improving their property. You're setting a precedent that I don't think you want to do. So I'm going to ask tonight for us, I'm going to make a motion that we...
Good.
Do I have to make the motion?
Please.
I would ask you to, yes.
Yes, I just going to ask that we repeal the motion of August 8th for a referendum vote on the repeal of the resolution of August 9th, 2011 lease agreements. Okay, I'll say that again. Withdraw the motion? Okay, I withdraw the motion. Oh, okay, all right, I'm waiting for the next, I'm going to wait for the next, which is number 10, number 11, to discuss the referendum itself. Yeah,
Right.
I want to make a motion, therefore, to repeal the Town Council's resolution of August 9th, 2011, approving lease agreements.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you for your help.
Comments on the motion? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had some questions of Janice, if it's okay, about at least the way it lies. Currently, the landlords, the property owners, are paying the electricity for the lighting that's located in the rear lot, correct? We don't know.
If there's public lighting, street lights of a limited kind, my belief is that the town is paying for that. I don't think there's private lighting back there, but is John Thompson still here? John, is there any private lighting back there? No. So our understanding is it's public lighting from street lights.
There's no lighting located on the rear of any of the buildings.
Well, if it's on the rear of a building, that would be the responsibility of the property owner. I mean, the plan is to put in period lighting similar to along the streetscape and make it far more lighted than it is now. But
I understand that, and I think it's a great project. It's a great goal. I think it would look nice, but I'm just looking at the financial aspects of this. The lease says that the town would observe any charges for electric service for the lighting during the term of the lease. That's just contemplated to be the new lighting that's put in, correct? There's no existing lighting that we would be assuming responsibility for.
Not to my knowledge is there lighting there that is not public. I mean, there is some light back there, but I think it's on the telephone electric poles, and that would be, I believe, the town's cost currently.
What is the decorative pavement that is referenced in here? When I looked at the plan that was given to us, there's no indication of decorative pavement.
Well, John Thompson can answer that, but the decorative pavement is the pavement that would be put in between several of the buildings. The pavement that connects the parking area with the Simpson Court sidewalk.
So it's like the alleyways.
Yes, if you
Identify yourself.
John
for the
Thompson,
record.
town engineer. If you were to look at the existing brick pavement that's out on Simpson Court or along Center Street, what we were trying to do was replicate that same treatment with some kind of flush pavement in the alleyways between the buildings and also along the center of the parking lot. So if you were looking at the plan, you see a differentiation of pavement type. While we haven't exactly determined whether it's going to be a concrete paver or a brick pattern or whether it's going to be stamped concrete, it's going to be a different pavement type and texture to set off the pedestrian walkways and the non-parking areas.
And who has the responsibility under this lease for clearing the snow from those walkways?
The property owners.
Then why would we be, on page 8, holding them harmless from failing to clear the snow?
Both sides are holding each other harmless. We're treating those sidewalks in the alleyways exactly as any other public sidewalk in the town of Wallingford.
So if the property owners don't clear the alleyway, if you want to call it that, and somebody slips and falls, the town is indemnifying the property owner, even though it's their responsibility to clear the snow. The town is indemnifying the property owners from any liability, is what the way this reads.
Section says the lessor is responsible for that. Where are you reading
It
it?
says, lessor agrees to defend and hold harmless lessee, and then when
Lessor is holding harmless for the removal in the walkway, and the town, I believe, is for the parking lot. Isn't that?
Well, it
where are
goes
you-
on to say lessor's failure to perform any action required of the lessor pursuant to the terms of this agreement, specifically including the failure of the lessor
Of the
to
lessor,
remove snow and ice.
from the walkway.
Yeah, so the lessor, as described in the beginning, is the property owner.
Right.
not the town of Wallingford. So,
They're agreeing to defend and hold us harmless for their failure to properly remove the snow. It's their obligation.
okay, and the walkway is that alleyway.
The two alleyways between the buildings, yes. There's two separate walkways.
Why is, for Janice again, at the end of page 8, it says, "It is intended that said identification cards shall be used by the lessor's employees or its tenants' employees." Why is the clause, "it is intended," instead of making it that that's the way it is?
I think it's meant as an explanation as to what that's the purpose of the cards.
Because, the way it's written, arguably the property owners can give these passes to anybody, whether they be employees, tenants.
No, I think the language is that the intention of the cards is for employees.
But it doesn't exclude.
That's the
It doesn't-
intention of the parties to have them used by the employees. And if they're something else, that would be not the intention of the parties. It's limited for employees. That's the intention of the issuance of the cards.
Well, understanding, Councilor Econopoulos, I can never pronounce your name.
Just say eco, it's easier.
Councilor Eco brought this up at the beginning, a concern that these passes might be given to like Holy Trinity School, which I know has been an issue here.
Well,
That's not the intent.
No, that is not the intent. It is for employees of the four owners.
Well, then how's,
We would feel that there's a breach if we find out that they're being used for some other purpose.
well, then how would the Holy Trinity School maintain their parking privileges that they have now under this system?
Well, they have the privilege of public parking.
For 4
But
hours.
right- 4 hours.
Right now, it's a 2-hour limit in that parking area. There's a sign there are a couple of signs along the fence. Now, it may not be enforced right now, but it is 2-hour parking there. Now,
All right, but-
people don't do that, and with this new agreement, there's a necessity to say, well, wait a minute, if we make this a really nice area, we have to be sure that everyone has a chance to use it within reason. That doesn't mean that, if a person is there for 3 hours and 50 minutes and they go out and move their car, there's another open space, they're not going to be ticketed. You can't leave the car in the one space.
And you're
But there's an ability to move the vehicle to another space. Or if for some period during a day, more than 40 people, or whatever the number of spaces, are able to get spaces because they're open, they don't get chased out of there.
Well, my point is
First
that
come, first serve. There aren't
so it's not any
assigned
different.
spaces.
It's not going to be any different than it is now. You're saying.
It won't be different in terms of the legal situation, other than we're talking about going to 4 hours rather than 2.
Then why would we need those passes?
Because the passes are for employees, they are not limited by the 4 hours. So up to 90 could be out there without the limitation of 4 hours. But it's first come, first serve. So if one of the 90 can't find a space, if that parking lot is so packed and used, and God bless everyone if that's what actually occurs, we live with that. But the intention is to make it just a far more attractive, welcoming area, again, to encourage use of the downtown and the health of the businesses.
So how if we're not enforcing the 2 hours now, is it my understanding that we have extra police officers that are going to I mean, I'm being a little sarcastic, and I apologize, but I know we don't have the extra police officers to monitor this situation. And are you telling me that somebody's actually going to be monitoring whether or not somebody moves to another parking space?
Well, when parking is checked, and it has been on occasion, because I've heard complaints about people getting tickets. I can't say it's every day, but on occasion it does occur, and they go and do their business, so they probably mark the tire or whatever. I'm not sure all the details, but at times that's going to occur.
You're telling me that tickets have been issued for the rear lot? I know tickets have been issued for the front lot.
I know in general tickets have been issued in that area. Now, whether it's in the rear lot or only in the court along Center Street, or there's certainly, I think, been complaints down the hill along Center Street or along Main Street. I don't know the specific area. I know there has been an effort to enforce the parking limits, partly because we receive complaints about people being in parking spaces too long and others weren't able to get a parking space.
So is it our intent, what I heard was we're going to do this slot first, and then we're going to go down Center Street sequentially? That's a long-term goal?
Very long term. And again, I mean, not to be too repetitive, 10 years ago, we were looking at other ways to enhance the downtown. The streetscape was what started it. And we haven't finished with all the streetscape, but what are some other ways? Well, parking was an issue, and people said, gee, these parking lots are in terrible condition. Well, we're not going to put money into the parking lots unless we have long-term leases. Well, how are we going to do that? That's going to be difficult with multiple owners. Well, let's choose one that has fewer owners and, you know, is very visible and has a chance of success with hopefully not too long a lead time. We chose the Simpson Court area and use the streetscape formula, bring those enhancements in that parking area. We began doing some designs, contact with property owners, and I mean, so now we are at the point that we have leases, we have some agreement on what will happen. In the future, if this is successful, certainly I would see the other parking areas that are also leased on down the hill as very prime points of similar treatment and improvement.
So just because these commercial entities are located in the center of town, they're treated differently than other commercial entities in our town?
Well, at this point, yes. Now, is there a place outside of the downtown that is similarly situated with multiple buildings in very densely constructed areas where there's limited parking and you're encouraging pedestrian traffic for retail and other purposes? Should that be the case, that could be an identified place for similar treatment. But often, the buildings constructed elsewhere are far newer, many of which have gone through planning and zoning approval. They have parking requirements associated with them when they were constructed, and they don't have the history, the long-term presence that the downtown has. Now, there's another reason for the downtown, and it's been voiced before, and it's a philosophy, and some people will agree with it, and I'm sure some won't. But what has been expressed, and certainly I agree with it, is that the downtown is the heart of the community. And we have made an effort to improve the downtown, and the streetscapes are a prime example of that. We have not pursued the streetscapes to date elsewhere, though certainly that has been ventured. I think people in Yalesville have said, gee, you know, this could be a nice area for that. I agree with that. We haven't finished with the downtown as yet. But typically, if we think about visiting another community, do we remember the subdivision that we visited? No, typically you remember a downtown as being representative of a community.
And when
Hence,
people,
our interest in dealing with the downtown and making it a place of civic pride, assembly, why we have Wallingford Center. That grew out, they encouraged this and gained life through the streetscape. Wallingford Center didn't exist before the whole streetscape effort became a reality.
well, that's their function. I mean, I don't, and, you know, there's groups on Route 5 that want to put together their own thing, and, you know, I'm sure they would lobby for what they're doing. But we have Wood and Kaplan that is overgrown and nothing's going on. We have the 390 Center Street that we took down that we own, and I don't think that's an appropriate way. I mean, it's not even paved. I would rather see us deal with that situation than
Well, this predates the Kaplan Wooding. This goes back 10 years ago. It's been gradually coming together into an egg that can hatch. Kaplan Wooding has its own tortured history. There have been proposals for that. They have not proceeded. The downtown seems to be a very difficult area to achieve improvement because there are a lot of different opinions, I guess. But certainly on Kaplan Wooding, there's not been a coalescing of various interests and discussions about what we would like to see as the improvement, the use of that property.
there's been no discussion. I mean, I've been up here for 2 years.
All right.
And when was Wood and Kaplan? 2007? And that was 4 years ago. So, I mean, I think that's a priority. It's property that we own. And
This predates that by a
that-
long time. So to drop this,
you know, I would need
because-
10 years from now for somebody to hold a decision that I made against that council. I mean, you know, okay, 10 years ago it was discussed and, you know, decisions were made, but our world, as I said last time, has drastically changed in the 10 years.
but
And
there's
it
been
doesn't-
discussion since 10 years ago. I said the idea first
Well, the first time
was discussed.
But the first time I saw this lease was when it was put on an agenda.
But
I
this-
don't object to the project. If the landowners were meeting us dollar for dollar, then sure, it's a win-win. But, you know,
This was discussed as part of this year's budget.
and that's another, that's
There were
another thing.
updates prior to that. Where does this stand?
When it was
It was
discussed,
approved, it was discussed at the budget. I indicated then that we were expectant to have leases, agreements from the property owners and would be coming forward. And that was the discussion associated with the capital non-recurring fund.
and when we did the budget, did you tell us, or did anybody tell us, that there would be no expenditure by the landowners? No. Was it disclosed to us that we would be taking over maintenance for the property that we don't currently have? No. I mean,
But we disclosed the price tag. No one asked for any details. That was still being negotiated. Now we have the lease. And if you disagree with the terms of the lease, you know, that's fine.
well, that's all I'm disagreeing.
But I'm just saying, this has received a lot of attention at various times during the past 10 years.
All right, I'm going to move this
Okay.
forward a little bit because other people want to talk. Eco,
Mayor,
Arno, you're next.
if I could just address the mayor. Our streetscape is nice, but we don't have that in full effect because I saw it in Christmas decorations and in flag decorations. We stop right at the train station. We have those green light poles, decorative poles on the other side of town that don't get the same treatment that these get up Center Street. So, I mean, if we're not even keeping up with that, to expand this, you're really talking further down the line for these other parking lots as we come down Center Street, because either we don't have the money or we don't have the manpower, but something is depriving those places of getting the same treatment as up here.
We're talking about seasonal decorations, and that certainly can be talked about with WCI. The effort has been for the retail center of the downtown. Increasingly, as you go down Quinnipiac, which is what I'm believe you're referring to.
Yes.
It is residential, and there has not been as much interest in extending the focal, the decorative elements beyond the downtown defined as probably maybe as far south or west as Washington, but certainly Cherry on up through probably Fair Street to the west. So that's been the focal point. If there's interest in further embellishments elsewhere, I mean, that's something that can be taken up. But that's not a structural improvement. Those are just, you know, like I say, they're
Well, what I'm saying is
seasonal
we're having-
decorations.
All right, I want
All right, so Mayor, if we could do this, could we possibly do this? Pursue the easement theory that we have now and talk to the owner at 350 Center and ask him to take his fence down. We make improvements to our parking lot as he makes improvements to his, and then we shovel his snow, and now we have some added parking uptown in the center of town. Because we'd have the same lease or easement agreement, I should say, that we have with Simpson, we could have with Center and Wood and Kaplan. As our property goes back to back with his, ask him to take his fence down, repair his side, we repair our side, and we got some good parking now for up here.
Well, if our goal is to only use Kaplan Wooding for parking, that has to be discussed. I think that's falls far short of what probably that property should be used for.
I don't mean
But-
the whole property, Mayor, I mean just maybe the
that could-
south side of it.
All right,
maybe
let me-
20
wait a
Can be
minute.
looked at. I mean,
Gentlemen, gentlemen. The item is discussion and possible action on repeal of the resolution. You know, I think we're kind of getting caught up in
We're just,
our discussion.
in order to get you guys to repeal something, I have to come up with some things that make it worthwhile.
Well,
make you say
sometimes shorter is better.
shorter. I know what the answer is already.
Well, whatever. It's certainly being discussed.
I appreciate it
I know
allowing
you
us to
do.
do that.
I know you do. Counselor Letourneau, you had something to say.
Yeah. I'm for this project. As I said before, being a downtown merchant and seeing what's going on downtown and what the needs are for the downtown. But I'm not the only one. And tonight, we've gotten a brief letter from the Economic Development Commission. And there was a comment made, well, of course they'll do it. Of course they're for it. It goes deeper than that. I was the only counselor at the Economic Development meeting last night when they talked about this. And they look at it deeper than just, yeah, it's a good thing. It affects economic development in the town of Wallingford. We have got to have a clean, vibrant, well-lit downtown to be able to attract businesses not only to the downtown, but on a larger scale to our industrial parks. How can we ever think of wooing a business, a major industrial firm or a major office building, when our downtown doesn't look good? It's our front yard. I've said it here in Chambers many times. This is our front yard of our town. And like anybody with the front yard, you want it to look good. Curb appeal. That's a real estate term, curb appeal. There's been a lot of misinformation, I believe, on this project. It's been put out there. We've heard the figure $500,000, like that's locked in stone, that's what's going to be spent. That is not true. That is a cap. It's a $500,000 cap. Cannot be spent more than $500,000, but less can be spent. This project could come in for $300,000. It could come in for $250,000. We haven't even We haven't even explored that, of whether it's going to be done by an outside contractor, or it's going to be done definitely by an outside contractor, or definitely by Public Works. This could be a public work project. They're competent. They're very competent to do it. So I think that has to be looked at. The parking, there's parking issue. I've heard about the Holy Trinity parking issue, and you know, anybody that parks up there all day long, depending on where you're parking, and that's where the confusion lies. Some of it is posted 2 hours. I couldn't tell you where. And I don't know if the police department could tell you exactly where, what spots are posted for 2 hours. Because some of the signs up there are older than me. And it's never been really designated, okay, this is 2 hour parking, or is the whole thing 2 hour parking? So nothing changes. It just hasn't been enforced. It hasn't been designated 2 hour parking in certain areas. It's kind of loose. With this, we're going to tighten it up. It's 4 hour parking. And that 4 hour parking is between 9 in the morning and 6 at night, like all the rest of our posted parking in town. You know, I had talked to Director of Public Works, and he says, John, basically what we're going to be plowing. I said, what are you going to be plowing? He says, now we get down, we plow 1 bay, and he says, now we're going to plow 2 bays, up and down. So, you know, it's not like they have to go in and they're going to spend a whole day up there removing snow from behind the buildings and all. A lot of that is the property owners. Property owners still has to maintain the backs of their properties. If you go up there at night, it's dark, the parking lot is uneven, and that whole uptown area is so well used because of the restaurants that sometimes it's hard to find parking up there at night. And I know there's been talk about Kaplan Wooding, and it seems like no matter what happens in this town, it always evolves back to Kaplan Wooding. If we needed new water pitchers, it would revert to Kaplan Wooding. But at night, it is not safe. Not safe for crime-oriented. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about people tripping on uneven sidewalks. The parking, you have people parking every which way possible up there. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And this is something that the property owners have agreed to since 1961 in prior leases to let the town use this. They don't have to. They don't have to. They could just block it all off for public use. It's a public-private entity. And we're not alone. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be bringing forward some information of other towns that have done exactly the same thing. A public-private partnership. We're not plowing new ground here. We're not reinventing the parking wheel. It's been done. I believe it's a good project. I believe it will help the downtown. I believe it will help the economic development of the town. And I think we should move forward with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good, thank you. Mayor?
I just wanted to clarify something, just so everyone understands. The current leases are about 60 feet. It covers an area about 60 feet wide, mainly the parking against the boundary line between the business property and the Holy Trinity School, so along that fence line. It's about 60 feet that extends from Center Street over through Church Street. And that is what we have dealt with as a community as far as clearing the snow and for public parking. Once you get beyond that, closer to the buildings and behind the bank, there are concrete walls. Behind some of the other properties are a variety of other things, but it's uneven, it's not really level. All of that would be leveled out. That's the intent. Right now, that is private, but that would be leveled out and all become part of the general public parking area. As you get very close to the buildings, there will be area that is outside the leased area, and that would be areas where dumpsters are, et cetera. That would be continued to be private property and maintained by the property owners. Is that correct? Just so that, I mean, that's the overall view of what is going on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Testa.
The real question before us tonight is whether or not we're going to repeal the decision we made a month ago. Some may feel appropriate to justify their support or opposition or argue it out again, but frankly, what we're being asked to do is decide whether we changed our mind based on an admirably large number of people who signed a petition. But I'm more interested in adhering to the process. I think the referendum process, it's in our charter, I respect it. I think it really just allows for the opportunity to avoid going to a referendum election if the council wants to rethink it. But re-arguing the whole thing, I don't think is really fruitful. We made a decision. We justified our decisions and explained ourselves to everybody. But I think it would be a disservice to those rest of the people in the community who may not have signed the petition, who may be in support of this, to now say, well, I really believed in this, but 28 people, 100 people signed a petition, so I'm going to change my mind. What I think the proper thing to do is to allow it to go forward to a public vote, which is the right way to do it. And that's it, the way the charter works, that's how democracy works. I'm anxious to see how it goes, and then we respect how that vote turns out, because then everybody has a chance to really have a say. We have to make decisions for the community. That's our job. It's either us or everybody. It can't be a portion. And if we were to change our mind based on a portion, then that does a disservice to everybody else. Just as it would be a disservice if we didn't allow the referendum to go forward, although we certainly have to. I'm in favor of getting this thing scheduled as soon as possible, respecting the results of it, and moving forward. So I'm certainly not changing my vote. I want to see this referendum happen and let the will of the people be the deciding factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I obviously missed this meeting last time around. I'm not going to pontificate up here to this evening. I do have a question for you, John, if you would, please. The alleyways between the buildings, are you planning on putting some sort of lighting there in the alleyways under your plan?
Yes, we are.
Okay, will they be attached to the buildings?
Yes, they will be.
Okay, so the electricity is going to be incurred by the town for those lights, obviously, then?
All the lighting for the term of the lease is going to be paid for by the town. It'll be designed, however, such that if after 30 years the lease terminates, all of the lighting associated with each of the individual properties would be metered and become the responsibility of the property owner. But for the term of the lease, the town of Wallingford will be paying for all of the electrical costs.
Okay, thank you. That was really the only question I had outside of the lease here. I will say this, that I agree with Councilor Testa that maybe it's time that people spoke on this. I know I've explained to lots of people what the lease entails. I think the folks who solicited signatures to repeal the council's resolution did their work as well. They should be congratulated for successfully bringing this to a referendum. And I think it comes down to strategy now. What's the strategy? The strategy is, on one side, do this election day. Strategy on the other side may be, let's not do it on election day. We're looking at 20%, at least 20% of the registered voters to come out. But I have a big concern, and the concern is this, that if this is defeated, it could possibly cripple the downtown area as far as parking goes. And I've been here my whole life. I don't want to see that happen. $500,000 payment in lieu of taxes. It's 25% of the $2 million we get from the electric division. Yes, it could be put somewhere else. Is it going to private property? Yes, it's going to private property. But if I rented from Chairman Parisi a home for no money for 30 years, how could I walk up to him and say, buy me some paint, I need to paint it?
You would, though.
I would, but you wouldn't give it to me. So I think over the long run, 30 years, $500,000, when you boil it down, turns out to be not as much as it appears initially up front. 30 years is a long time. I hope to be here when that lease runs out. Actually, I wish to be in Florida when that lease runs out. But again, I think it's critical that we have parking downtown, but I also respect the town charter, which we all govern by, and I think the people need to speak on whether they agree that parking is critical to downtown Wallingford or it's not. So I'm going to allow this to go to referendum. I am not going to vote to repeal this tonight. I'm going to look forward to the referendum. I would only hope that anybody who is interested gets the right information and makes the best decision for the town of Wallingford. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Councilor Rescatti.
Thank you. Much has been said about using town money for private property. It is private property. However, once there is a 30-year lease and it becomes a public parking lot, then even though it's privately owned, it's public, and it is for the public. And I've also heard say that once we improve the parking lot, then the property owners can sell their money, their property for lots of money. Well, if you owned a piece of property and you had a 30-year lease on it, would I be paying you top dollar when I know I have no control over the parking lot for 30 years? I don't think so. I say that this is a good thing for our town, for the image we want to project in our town for people and visitors that come here. This is, as John has said, this is our front yard, and I feel it's a worthy project. As far as the Wood and Kaplan property goes, yes, that's a property we own and that we could put money into, but in 4 or 5 years, when we decide maybe we should use that property for a police station, what are we going to do? Tear up the parking lot? I wouldn't want to see that. I say, as my fellow councilors on the right have said, let it go to referendum. I will not vote to repeal this tonight.
You all set?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not going to prolong this. I think the council has spoken very eloquently on this subject. And I agree with everything really that was said. I commend the people that exercised their right by charter, their legal right to seek a referendum, and well, they should if that's their feeling. They were successful, and that's a good thing. I also believe that the entire town should have, or actually all the registered voters in town should have a right to express their opinion. And they'll be able to do that through the referendum. So I'm in favor of it, and I guess we have to call for public input. Mr. Zandri?
Gino Zandri, 9 Balsam Ridge Circle. I know all you counselors up there say that you sit there representing the residents of Wallingford. And I really would like to have you really listen carefully to what I have to say this evening. I circulated the petitions drive, and I personally myself got over 1,000 people to sign that petition personally. And while doing so, I had the opportunity to go back and forth with these people and discuss this whole issue. And by doing that, you get a feel for where the people stand on this issue. And if I could have assembled in an auditorium every registered voter in the town of Wallingford, I'm telling you, 90% of them would have signed the petition. That's where the pulse is in our town right now on this topic. And the message is clear. The residents, the voters, do not want to spend any public funds on private property. End of story. The Wood and Kaplan property was brought up many times in the discussions. And the feeling is this, and I explained to them, well, the reason nothing's being done there is because of the uncertainty of the future plans for that property. Their feeling is you don't have to put a Cadillac parking lot up there. All you need is some basic pavement, some street lighting, and they would rather see some money spent there, and we will gain some parking spots uptown. With this proposal, we're spending all this money. We're not gaining one parking place at all. We're just beautifying it. And then I hear arguments up here tonight about the image of Wallingford, the image of our downtown. Well, have any of you driven uptown lately in downtown? What do you see? You see streetscapes full of weeds this high in the curbs. You can go down Quinnipiac Street right now, and I'll guarantee you that's what you'll see. This is our image. We spend all this money for bricks and new pavement and street lighting, and we don't even maintain what we have. And yet we want to turn around and spend another $500,000 on a beautification project. Believe me when I tell you, as sure as I'm standing here, the public doesn't want you to do it. So before you make a decision, think about what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Ben Martin, Ward Street. I have one question. There was some talk about snow plowing and like the thing. So the question is, what is in the current situation and with this new lease, what would be the impact of a parking ban on this parking lot since it's public parking? Would nobody be able to park there during a parking ban?
The parking ban generally is on the through streets.
It's not, okay, so it's not on public parking.
That's correct. I mean,
Okay.
people use the parking lots to take their cars or other vehicles off of the public street.
So that's the current situation as well as the new situation. It would be the same.
Yes, it would be the
Okay.
same.
So my only comment is that we're talking about our image here, and how people see us and everything. And I think our downtown looks great, and not many people are looking at the back of the buildings where the dumpsters are for our image. So fixing up this parking lot I don't think it's going to improve our image that much. And the fact that Mr. Letourneau says sometimes you go up there, it's hard to find parking, means that parking lot's being used anyways and doesn't need to be improved. And if we really want to improve our image, let's look to our entrances. If you get off of 15 and come up Ward Street, it looks like we don't have any money to fix a road. That road is terrible. We'd be better off spending our money there. If you come in from 91, it looks like we're farm country. So, I mean, if we're concerned about our image, I think there are better places to spend it than on a place where businesses are putting their dumpsters. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Luby.
West Luby, Monterey's Trail. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
I can't help but comment that by using that name, you did it with great reluctance, but thank you just the same.
I'm sorry?
Thank you just the same. There's a couple of items that have been said that do need clarification. Quinnipiac Street, Mr. Mayor, is no more residential than Center Street. Sorry to inform you if you haven't been there lately. The contracts that you refer to, the new leases, are not 90 certificates for employees of the 4 property owners. They're for employees and tenants, and tenant employees. And then it was said that you did not want to spend any money without a long-term lease. Well, the present leases are not leases, they're easements. But those easements that are now 50 years old were once 10-year leases. They were long-term leases. Maybe you haven't been in office for 50 years, although that's arguable. The fact that when you had taken office, that long-term period had expired, and it was then on a one-year basis, did not give you the prerogative to stop whatever had been being done during that first 10 years. I don't know if anybody remembers. Do you, Mr. Chairman, remember what was spent on the Wooding-Kaplan referendum?
No. No, I don't.
How about $30,000? So you're making a $30,000 decision tonight. If this referendum goes through, and I'm sure it will, and it will come back in a positive way, you will have spent an additional $30,000.
I don't believe it'll be $30,000, but go ahead.
If you have a referendum that is set up in the same manner that you set up Wooding-Kaplan, and I'm sure you would, that's the figure you're going to be looking at. The leases themselves, I spent $25 to obtain the original leases in the original right-of-way and the new leases. I got to tell you, first of all, in the lease that Mr. Elbert signed, there's a missing paragraph. He must not even have read it, or his attorney may not have read it, but there's a paragraph missing. All the contracts, all the new leases, call for artificial lighting. In contrast to real lighting, what is it, a drawing of a moon? What did they mean by artificial lighting? The town is going to contribute artificial lighting. That's the only lighting that's described as part of the town's responsibilities. In reading the original leases, the original rights of way and easements, it was obvious what was being done at that time. The obligations of the town to plow and sand, and remove snow, and maintain in proper order was limited only to to the 25-foot right-of-way running from Center Street to Church Street. We had no responsibility to do any of that on any of the parking areas to either side of that right-of-way. Obviously, it was the intent of the authors of those original documents that the property owners were going to continue to maintain, remove the snow, plow the snow, etc., do the sanding, all of those things to maintain their own parking areas, and the only responsibility of the town was limited to the 25-foot right-of-way. And if the town attorney reads those documents carefully, I think she will agree with me. That is the obligations that we had. If the present owners have thought that the obligations of the town exceeded the 25-foot right-of-way, they better reread those old documents. They're in very plain English. They're not confusing in any way. I don't know if, I'm sure you have, given some thought to the fact that many of the people, most of the people who are involved in the obtaining of these petitions are the same people that were involved in obtaining the petitions for the Wooding-Kaplan referendum. And just as they turned out the 20% for that, I'm quite confident they're going to be turning out the 20% for this. And I say that with confidence because I've talked to them, and unbelievably how well organized they are. They're assuming that this is going to go to referendum, and they've already reserved media time. I don't want to say where and how, but they've already taken the steps necessary to make sure that that 20% is met. Even to the point of planning on manning the allowed distance from the polling stations on election day, making sure with handouts that all of the people who go in to vote on election day are very much aware of who voted how in regards to the parking lot. I think that one of the things that my wife and I happened to be shopping one evening. It was around 10:30, about a week ago. And I said, she's been confused as to which parking lot everybody's been calling me about. And I said, I'll go show you. So we drove up Church Street and turned in. Of course, the only sign on Church Street is Wells Fargo. You wouldn't know that that is the back entrance to the municipal parking lot. But we went in there anyway. There were 3 telephone poles, one of which had a street-type ornamental, street-type lighting ornament. That was it. For the entire parking lot, that was it. Now, there were 2 other poles that had square flood-type lights that the electric division leases or rents to private parking lots, like on South Turnpike and the Tower Shopping Center and so forth. And there were 2 of those. They were both out. 9:30 at night, darker than hell, they were out. Then there were about maybe a dozen or more.
All right, Mr. Luby.
No, I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
The item is the
I'm telling you,
repeal of
all
the
the
council
reasons why
resolution.
you are being taken for a ride.
Okay.
There's about 12 lights, poles, that are maybe 15 feet high. They're short, ornamental type poles. Every one of them was out. So the only light for the entire parking lot was the one street lamp. Now, I don't know whether the bulbs are out, whether the wires are cut, whether the electric eyes don't work anymore, whether the circuit breakers are out. I don't know why, but obviously the darkness of that parking lot is man-made. Somebody is finagling and telling you how terribly dark it is, how much. The lighting is there. is not being used. And I'm telling you, you have every reason in the world to think that the original decisions that were made were not in the best interest of the town and the taxpayers, and I hope you do repeal that motion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Right here first.
I'm Fred Olbrich. I live in Wallingford. I live on 59 Madison Avenue. And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council, the Town Council, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm a lifelong community member of the town of Wallingford. I was raised, born, educated here. I work here. I'm going to die and be buried here in Wallingford. And I'm saying all this because perhaps I have a little bit of a different perception than many of you have, or some of you have. Okay? Everything said tonight is valid. I understand and agree with the various statements. And I understand that it is going to go to referendum. So what I had written out here isn't going to work. But I would like to just make a few comments on what I think. Okay? I'll be 81 years old in a couple months, and like I said, I probably look at life a little bit differently than most people in this room. I own 60 North Main Street. That's commonly known as the old library. I've owned the library for 9 years. Last 2 years, it's been vacant. I've been fixing it up, and it's one of Wallingford's legacy buildings. It was started 129 years ago, before cars were even invented, and here we are talking about parking spaces for cars. That's why we have a lot of problems, because that area is so old that there wasn't any provisions for cars because they weren't even invented yet, all right? I'm one of the 4 people who signed the lease with the town of Wallingford. I know the Meriden record says that there's 3 people. There's really 4. I'm the 4th. There are 4 reasons, I think, why it shouldn't go to referendum. Okay. I understand the reasons that it's going to referendum. I accept that. This is not sour grapes, but I think there's 4 reasons that it should not have gone to referendum. Number 1, Wallingford urgently needs and deserves a good parking lot for the uptown area, as I call it, not downtown. Number 2, by keeping the lease intact, this is very important, right? You know what's going to happen for the next 30 years. You know. By not keeping the lease intact, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 30 years for that property. My property is up for sale. It was shown today. You have no idea, neither do I, who's going to buy that property. I'm getting my estate in order. I'm going to sell the property. Okay? And it was brought out that 2 of the other properties are up for sale also. So you are really taking a crapshoot on the future of Wallingford, because if somebody buys these properties, you may not have a parking lot. And I know it's never been brought up here, from what I've heard, on why there was a road going back and forth, a right-of-way, as they call it, a right-of-way between Church Street and Center Street. The reason for it, going from memory, is that there was all kinds of traffic uptown in 1961. That's why you have one-way streets all the way from Colony Street up to North Main Street in order to alleviate the traffic. Why? Because you have this right-of-way. That right-of-way could be a thing of the past. And uptown will be different. I look at Wallingford as a great town. It is a great town, and it has a legacy. And what you really did tonight is you toyed with that legacy. Because if you don't have parking uptown, like Councilor Letourneau said, right, you need a vibrant uptown. Without parking, who's going to move to Wallingford? Who wants to go uptown? Okay, and then I like to take issue with what's been brought out tonight, saying that public money, shouldn't be spent for private property. You all know that every day, money is spent for private property. Department of Public Works, every time they go out and they patch a hole, or they have a road that's lengthened, or the other departments have put down a pipe, okay? Every day there's money being spent for private property. That's what government is all about. You all know this. You know that's what government is all about. The object is to make the community better in the long run. And in the short run, maybe somebody makes a few dollars out of it. Now, none of us are trying to make a few dollars out of it. Because if you look at it, I did the math, and you divide $500,000 by 4 people, okay, over 30 years, it comes to $4,167 a year. You try and go out and rent property with the location that we're talking about and say, I'll give you $4,167 for 30 years. Nobody's going to do that. The town has a great deal. Did we get any money from the town? No. Eminent domain? No. Can we get out of this deal for 30 years? No. I'm telling you, the town has a great deal. And now the town doesn't have a great deal. So we're going to see what the voters are going to decide, and we'll see. I personally hope that this goes through and the voters don't decide, because if it's decided that no money is going to be spent, property owners aren't going to spend the money, and the legacy of Wallingford for the next 30 years is in jeopardy. But thank you for all your efforts. It's very much appreciated by everybody that I know.
Thank you, Mr. Schubert. Okay, I think that we're at that moment. Who we got? I'm sorry, come on.
Debbie Gross, 114 Long Hill Road. I too like to see Wallingford as a nice community, and I think it is a nice community. And I would like to see parking uptown, but unfortunately, the project that's offered doesn't really add any additional parking. And I would also have to say that the people who are currently parking back there are currently patrons of the restaurants in the property owners' buildings. There are other properties in town that could use parking behind Archie Moore's and such. That parking lot is packed. I've checked it out on several occasions, and I've noticed that parking lot is extremely packed. There isn't a place to be found. They're overflowing in the old Wooding Kaplan property, and I know you're going to say, oh, that Wooding Kaplan property again, but it is flowing in there, and that parking lot or that area is horrendous. So why not legitimize the existing parking spaces that are currently there and offer the parking there? That will add to the downtown. That will beautify an area that currently looks terrible. And that parking lot or that property has been there 20 years. It hasn't been 10 years, it's been 20 years that it's been sitting there looking like that, and each year it gets worse and worse. So I would offer to you to please consider that and to rescind your decision. I know you're not. I knew from the moment I walked in the door tonight that you wouldn't. I guess in some way I was hoping you would think twice about it, because when you look through this agreement and you look at the improvements and the repairs that are required, they are extensive. Retaining walls, ripping up the pavement, the wiring, going between buildings and ripping up the asphalt between buildings. You're talking about encroaching right on up to the building itself. I mean, you could actually do more damage than good when you're doing a lot of that stuff. We all know that when we do renovations around our homes, that we all like to get a quote and assume it's going to be X number of dollars, but you know, we all can anticipate that, you know, sure as anything, it's going to be a lot more than that, because, you know, when you start doing things like that, you open up cans of worms. Like I said, if you read this, if you look through the lease, and I think if the public looks through the lease and they see the amount of items that they have on here and the repairs and the improvements, including an area where they want to make a nice area where they put the dumpsters. I mean, that's going well above and beyond just providing parking and a little bit of lighting. And I know previously we've asked about Wooding Kaplan and putting some parking there and asking the town to at least maintain it a little bit. But I know the mayor has always said he never wanted to spend the money, and he always wants to be fiscally responsible. But I ask you to take a look at this lease. I mean, you're saying $500,000, maybe $250,000, but I would have to beg, if you're originally saying $500,000, that it could be $750,000. This lease is so open-ended, and we are so responsible for so much here that I think we need to rethink the whole thing. I think we need to take a step back, rescind your decision, rethink everything. As far as the maintenance, we can't maintain our own property. You look at the sidewalks on Main Street. They're upheaving. They patch them, the concrete with pieces of asphalt. You still can trip and fall on them. There's stuff growing all over the place. So I would beg to say that we don't have the manpower to maintain the lot the way it's described. And if you look in the lease, it also talks about after 5 years that the leaseor and the leaseor will look at the areas to see if there's any additional improvements that need to be made. So it continues, in my mind, to be more and more open-ended, where it truly can cost us a lot more money than we all think. So please consider, again, I know it's probably in vain, but I ask you again to please rescind your decision, rethink this. You know, we can't take care of, we never took care of 390 Center Street, we never took care of the American Legion building, the Park and Rec area. We have so many other properties and things that we haven't taken care of and that we need to attend to, including the schools. So please, I know, last appeal, please rescind your decision, rethink this. Thank you.
All right, come on. Let's,
Well, no, I'm just,
we have other work to do, so get out.
I'm sorry I'm taking up your time.
That's okay.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. I wasn't even going to speak tonight, but I know the deal's a fait accompli. But I just want to give you a few things here. You know, there was mention of the numbers that were passed in to the town clerk, and she did a fantastic job in doing the numbers, and we're very happy on how everything went. But just so you know, those numbers were on par or greater than the speed that we were getting Wooding Kaplan signatures. We received most of these signatures within the first 2 weeks. Just to give you some idea of the number of people. People came to my house to sign these petitions. I didn't even know some of these people. And they just came to my house to sign them. We were getting emails, phone calls to sign these. we didn't collect the last 2 weekends. You had Hurricane Irene, and you had Labor Day weekend. We didn't collect. We told everybody, don't collect. We don't need them. We had them already. Just to give you an idea of the outpouring, I think it's even great. I think the support, as Mr. Zandri said, is greater than the Wooding Kaplan numbers. So I just want you to be aware of some of that. Most of the stuff has already been said previous to this. And I don't want to take anybody's time. But just to go on further as the window or the showpiece of the town of Wallingford, Mr. Martin touched upon when you get off the Mara Parkway. When you get off the Mara Parkway, which I'll call the old Quicks Equipment exit, I think that the cement blocks, the weeds, the Garden Road blocks, as you come up to the park there, is it Wallace Park? I'm trying to think of the name of the park that's there, that still has a cone that Mr. Luby mentioned about years ago when a flagpole was knocked down. I mean, this is minor money, but if you want to look at how the town looks, this is how people even come into our community. And if I remember correctly, the mayor, many years ago, when Wooding Kaplan was defeated in the referendum, there was discussion about cleaning up the property. And if I remember correctly, and the mayor will correct me, I think the mayor said at that point, the Park and Public Works doesn't have the time to take care of that. Well, here we are taking on added responsibility, including snow removal for that parking lot. And do you even have an estimate of what these will cost us? I know nobody's going to answer, but it's a rhetorical question. What the costs are in the future to maintain this lot over a 30-year period. And again, Wooding Kaplan would be the property to use. And I just would like to say one thing, and this is on topic when it comes to voting tonight, that I would hope that anybody who has affiliated with any of the property owners will recuse themselves from the votes tonight. And I just hope that's understood. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, I think we're ready to vote. We'll have a
Mr.
vote.
Chairman, can I ask the town clerk one question, please? May I ask the town clerk a question?
Sure.
Barbara, how many signatures were collected totally?
On the next item, it states it in your,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not looking that far ahead.
that's all right. I counted 2634, but there's got to be at least 20 sheets that we never even touched.
Okay. 3,000, even if we said 3. How many registered voters are in town?
26,000.
26,000?
26,000.
All right. So 26,000 registered voters, even if we gave you 3,500 signatures. Okay. Doesn't really represent all of the registered voters, so that's why I think we need a referendum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll have a roll call vote.
Okay. Cervoni.
No.
Economopoulos.
Repeal, yes.
Farrell.
No.
Fishbein.
Yes.
Letourneau.
No.
Riscotti.
No.
Sullivan.
No.
Testa.
No. No.
Chairman Parisi.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay.
Failed.
Fails.
Oh, I
It
thought you
failed.
passed.
It failed.
Okay.
Item 11.
Item 11,